What did I do in my previous videos that made me want to create this one? Let's find out. If you have missed any of my previous videos, the last one on Liam Payne's tragic struggles, or what makes you beautiful, that One Direction saying, you are welcome to click on the link below and check out those videos. How did this video come about? Both AJ and Liam were working on a Netflix boy band series. There's that connection right there. We're talking about different boy bands. We're talking about different generations. And we're also talking about a vocal group. A boy band leaning on each other. But what happens when that boy band breaks up? As stated in the previous video, Paramount Plus put out a documentary on boy bands, starting with the Beatles all the way to today. But I want to focus on the boy bands that I know. So the four boy bands that I am familiar with is New Kids on the Block, who started in the 80s, Backstreet Boys and Nsync, both started in the 90s, and now One Direction, who began in 2010. These are all different generations. So we're going from the late 80s to the mid 90s to 2010. And that's why I question about generations. What makes these boy bands different? And what experiences have they had? And what needs to be looked at is the generation, how the band was created, the age of the members of the band when they were created, and when they got famous. And that is because of brain development. Then we also have to look at what kind of experiences did they have throughout their time as a band, and what made these boy bands break up. So let's start off with New Kids on the Block. New Kids on the Block formed in 1984. They are a bunch of friends in elementary school that grew up in the Boston area. And that's how the band was formed in their teenage years. When did they hit fame? They put out their first album and it really didn't do well. And then they put out Hangin' Tough. It was in 1989. And, you know, what's that? 5 years to finally hit it some fame? Go on tour? And that's how it all started. With the Backstreet Boys, they were manufactured, as the term has been used. The Backstreet Boys, it was in the newspaper ad, looking for 5 16 to 19-year-old teenage boys for a music group. They came together in 1993 when they were in their teens. And one member, Kevin, was 21. But that's not when they hit fame. They didn't hit fame until 1996 in Europe only. And the two members that were still teenagers were AJ and Nick. But their way to fame took time. The US was no fan land. With Nsync, they formed in 1995. They took a similar route by going to Europe with the same record company management as the Backstreet Boys. They did not become famous until 97-98. Nsync was developed by starting off with Chris Kirkpatrick, finding JC, Justin, Joey, all in the Orlando area, with the exception of Lance Bass. So they created the band, then management took over. All three bands before 2000 took time to reach the fame. It didn't come to them like that. With One Direction, they started on X Factor as individual solo artists trying to get on the show. Simon Cowell's the one that put the group together. So they too were manufactured via a reality show. And then they became famous. And they too were all teenagers. As teenagers, your brain is not fully developed. It is stated that your brain really doesn't fully develop until your mid-20s. So give or take 25. My Backstreet Boys members didn't hit fame until 1996, and the two members that were still teenagers were AJ and Nick. The other three members were in their 20s, 21 to 25 years old. I'm not stating that their brains were fully developed at that time. Kevin would have been 25. So that's a big difference in age. You're talking about like a 25-year-old, and then you're talking about a 16-year-old. You know, there is this gap, okay, between my members of Backstreet Boys. With this gap in age, you had more of father figure Kevin, and you had some older members that had experienced life, such as Howie going to college. I feel like there was a balance. When it comes to One Direction, they were all teenagers when they hit fame. And when it comes to Nsync, so when they formed in 1995, the oldest member was already in their 20s, and the youngest member, Justin, was only 14. They also ranged in age. I know Lance was 16. So we had a combination of, once again, younger members, teenagers, brains not fully developed. I'm still not saying a 21-year-old's brain is fully developed when you are drinking alcohol and you're legal. Hey, dude, I've been there, 21 and drinking. You're not thinking clearly. Okay? So it doesn't matter. But what I'm basically stating is that both Nsync and Backstreet Boys had members that were younger and members that were older, and the older members, I can only believe, cared about the younger members, but perhaps provided advice or guidance. Once again, they lived life longer, they experienced more. And they experienced more because they had already been working. What, Kevin came from like Disney World, Joey from Nsync, Christopher Patrick, I don't know, they came from Universal, so they had jobs. These One Direction boys' brains were not fully developed. Now, these boy bands, including the ones before 2000, they too were teenagers, early 20s. But they took time to become famous. And when they became famous, there were some teenagers in the group and there were some 20-year-olds. That was not the case with One Direction. So that's how the bands got developed. And that's how the bands gradually became famous and had all the girls in love with them. One Direction is the band that is most different than all the others because there was no social media. Nothing like that. Like there is in 2010. So that's how the bands were created in the ages approximation that they were when they began and when they became famous. When it comes to management now, New Kids on the Block, Maurice Starr was their management, and yet at one point, New Kids on the Block left Maurice Starr. And with Backstreet Boys and Nsync, they had the same management. They sued their management. And their management sucked too. But One Direction's stands out, I believe, from what I have learned. They had the worst of it all. They were taken advantage of big time by their management. And they had so much control over them in all aspects, as I have read, including their creativity of music. Okay, so we have spoken about the formation of the bands, the ages that they were, as well as when they hit fame, as they were in their teens and 20s for each group. We've talked about their management. The final thing we need to speak about is their experiences and what made these boy bands, with the exception of Backstreet Boys, break up. Let's start off with New Kids on the Block. What I can say is they put out several albums. They did have one member, Jonathan Knight, was having panic attacks. And, that makes me wonder about the pressure that these, at the time, New Kids on the Block was not thought of as a boy band because that term didn't exist, but they had the fans. They had those girls. Oh yeah. New Kids on the Block dealt with lip syncing to their songs. And they chose to take a hiatus in 1994. Their final album didn't do as well, and I don't know what exactly made New Kids on the Block take a break. I would think that the lip syncing had something to do with it. In 1994 as well, music was changing, and I believe that could have also contributed to New Kids on the Block no longer continuing making music. But the thing about New Kids on the Block is they returned in 2008, and they have been going strong ever since. And that is because Joey McIntyre, the youngest one, said he wanted to have a career. What he actually wanted was just to be able to continue to perform and there not be this type of breakup as there was in 1994. Now, when it comes to the Backstreet Boys, as I said, they have been going for 31 years strong. When speaking about the Backstreet Boys, from the get-go, they wanted to have a career. Now, they have had their ups and downs and highs and lows. And when Kevin left in 2005, what kind of contract did they have with Jive? Did they have a contract to make 7 albums? Is that why they continued to make music after Kevin left? I don't know that answer, and Backstreet Boy fans, man, I'd love to know that answer. But did One Direction have the same type of deal? 5 albums contract? That's why they just popping out? And then tours? They've also dealt with Brian's open heart surgery in 1998, right when they were in the middle of, fame and everything. And they dealt with AJ's drinking in 2001 and, he going to rehab and Brian's vocal issues. His voice is not what it used to be. And I am perfectly fine with that. My Backstreet Boys now have families. As brothers, they're family. They have supported each other. And 4 of the 5 members have done solo projects. And the Backstreet Boys have allowed that to occur. And that is just amazing. I love it. With Nsync, they came out in 1997. They put out 3 albums and a Christmas album. And then they took a hiatus in 2002. And even though they started in 1995, they were just a go, 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 just like the Backstreet Boys. So I can understand them wanting to take a break and look into other endeavors, as Justin Timberlake did, and he has had an amazing solo career. So I don't know why it took Nsync 20 years to get back together. But here we are, another 90s boy band, still around. They made their song for the Trolls movie, Paradise, and I'm looking forward to whatever is to come. I know that put a smile on Nsync fans, big time. And then, unfortunately, we have One Direction, and I feel like their music is really good. Due to the circumstances, it saddens me that we don't have this extremely popular boy band as the 3 previous ones I mentioned be able to return, all 5 members, and reunite. Now that's not possible with One Direction fans, and I'm sad for you guys. Zayn left the band early. It was stated by him later on that he really wanted to get out of the band within a year. And like I said, the pressure that's put on these boys at a young age, maybe it was the management, maybe it was the brothers, or it was other members that maybe they didn't get along with. And I kind of sense that One Direction fans can, share that information, but I kind of sense that it was probably a combination of the pressure that was put on them, the fandomania that there was, how there wasn't any freedom. Zayn had said that he just wanted a private life. And what he found out was that it was just his life had been turned upside down, and he had no private life. He had security around him all the time. But yet he went back and made solo albums. His own personal creative music. So it makes me wonder, is that another reason? The lack of creativity in writing their own songs? Well, One Direction did start writing their own songs. But who had the final say? In that interview by Liam, he stated that he had wanted to get out of the group earlier. It's unfortunate that for One Direction, they had to go through what they had to for their 5 or 6 years that they were together. And it's 100% understandable that, hey, they all have solo careers. Harry Styles, of course, I think is, most famous. But all the others have done a really good job in their own music as well. And I think that that is awesome that perhaps One Direction was each member's stepping stone to becoming a solo artist successfully. The 3 boy bands I'm talking about, all 5 members are still alive. Yes, 2 of them took long hiatuses, but they're all together. And now with Nsync returning last year, we've got this boy bands from the 80s and 2 from the 90s that are still making music, and I think that is awesome. But it still makes me wonder, even though One Direction was manufactured, they all wanted solo careers, being on X Factor, would One Direction ever reunite again? Who knows? They could have reunited all 5 of them in 10 years. To hear what their voices sounded like as a group, we would have been so lucky. And you can see with my Backstreet Boys, and I think that you can see with New Kids on the Block, that, yeah, they're adults. Their voices have changed a little bit. Same goes with Paradise, an Nsync song, I feel. You can hear the difference, but yet that song, Nsync, Paradise, it still has that Nsync feel. I just want to share some final thoughts on boy bands in regards to may have been overworked. And I believe what it is burned out. In all 3 cases, but more so I feel by One Direction, I feel like they have just done so much work, these so-called quote-unquote boy bands or vocal groups, in creating amazing music, all the fans that have come to love them, the pressure that they have to perform and put out music, then go on tour, and put out music and go on tour. What are you to expect? If you are living this type of life, you are going to get exhausted. You are going to get burnt out. Because of this, you may not be thinking clearly. You may make some poor choices. Your behaviors may not be the best. And if you are at such a high as far as fans go and the pressure to perform and put on a show, that's a lot. That's a lot for all 4 bands. They're being worked so hard. They're getting pressure from their management. And like Brian said, when he had his open heart surgery in 1998, he had to delay his surgery 2 times because a tour was already being sold. That's absolutely crazy, and it's unfortunate that all these boy bands I'm speaking about, I could see why certain members of a group could, unfortunately, fall into the habit of using drugs and alcohol because of all of this pressure that they have at such a young age. And because they're like superstars and their brains are not fully developed to handle all of this. And so they cannot clearly process what is all happening because their brains are not fully developed when you are a teenager, not even when you're 21. So this is my take on how I feel boy bands, or quote unquote, have been handled. And yeah, it's great. The girls absolutely love them. However, there's a price to fame. And you have to have this right support around you that can keep you grounded and not let your ego go out of control and then fall into these negative behaviors. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed this video talking about different generations of boy bands and what they may have faced, what may have been different between generations, some of them being similar. There's a possibility I might go farther in depth on this video than what I have done. I don't know. I believe that both Backstreet Boys, New Kids on the Block, and Nsync all had better relationships amongst their members, and I think there was better relationship with their management, even though their management may have still sucked. I don't think it was as bad as One Direction. I feel that there is definitely a brotherhood amongst all three boy bands, New Kids on the Block, Backstreet Boys, and Nsync. My three boy bands that I grew up with, they all had to work just a little bit harder to get known. Those boy bands all began before this internet thing and social media. One Direction did not. And they also started before there was all these TV reality shows, like American Idol, like The X Factor, like The Voice. My boy bands had to work hard to get what they wanted. A lot of the artists that go on these TV shows don't have to work as hard because they get a record deal. One Direction didn't come in first, but they got a record deal. But my three boy bands didn't go through any of that. I don't know what the future might hold for this boy band Netflix series that both AJ and Liam worked on. This is another generation. And are they going to stay together or are they going to break up? Because what really makes a band break up? All four have dealt with management issues. The pressure, the fans, performing, stress, anxiety. Like I said, Jonathan, and his panic attacks. What was up with Zayn? Was there something going on that he wanted to get out after 1 year? Was it that bad? I hope that you guys are having a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.